You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Levi Tisla with Mailbox Money here in Sioux Falls. And joining me out of, we'll call it the northern country of Brookings, is Doug Murano. He is an award-winning editor and publisher. He's won the Bram Stoker Award, the Shirley Jackson Recognition, and an international acclaim. And he's the founder and CEO of Bad Hand Books. Uh, Doug, we appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir. So I always like to start with kind of a little bit of your personal background and let people know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in South Dakota, in Huron, South Dakota, and came up through the public school system there, and then went down to the University of South Dakota, and earned my undergraduate and graduate degrees there, in English and creative writing and political science, and then met my wife, Jessica, down there, and we have just kind of lived up and down the interstate system, I guess, since then. We kicked out to Rapid City for a couple of years, and then we're back in the Brookings area. We've got our four kiddos here, so that keeps us really busy. And then in 2022, I incorporated Bad Hand Books after working for about a decade in independent presses, as just kind of a hired gun for other publishers.
Okay. Well, so I'll get it. You went north, south, east, west, all in South Dakota, huh?
Yeah, we don't like to get too comfortable, I guess.
How many years have you been in Brookings then?
Gosh, it's been coming up on 5 now. Yeah.
Five now. So you moved like right towards the tail end of the pandemic then?
It might actually, well,
Or right in the
actually a
middle
little
of
bit
it
longer
then,
than
huh?
that. It's like everything feels now and forever ago, you know?
You
Um,
know, yeah.
it's funny because this is actually kind of a funny story. So we moved out of our house in Rapid City, to come back to this side of the state and just be a little bit closer to family. And it was actually right before the pandemic hit. And we moved into a little townhouse in Brookings. Not a bad place, but we were just trying to kind of get our feet under us, before we
Hmm.
committed to buying a house. But there are 6 of us, and we had 2 Labrador retrievers at the time. And
I have two
but
currently. I
okay,
know how
yeah,
that
so
goes with them.
yeah, you know how it goes. But the thing I kept telling my wife, because we had some misgivings about uh, renting such a small space. But I said, well, honey, it's not like we're going to be stuck there all the time. Well, then the pandemic hit, and here we are in a really small townhouse, stuck there all the time, schooling our kids there. I took over one of the closets in the townhouse as my sort of like home office. So if you can imagine, just it was an intense period.
Oh, I very much can imagine that. That is uh definitely I could see how why you're doing horror stories after
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it has a lot of I think we all kind of went a little bit mad during that time.
Absolutely.
Thankfully, we're in a much more comfortable spot now for all of us, and I'm really, really
You can
thankful for
laugh at
that.
it
But
now.
it just kind of seemed like that there was a lot that was really horrible about the pandemic, and that's one of the things that I can actually laugh about is I remember distinctly saying, "Well, honey, it's not like we're going to be stuck there all the time, all day, every day." And well, yes, we were for about 6 months. So
I had at the time I had just one of my Labrador retrievers, and we were also we me and my at the time girlfriend, now wife, we were in a one bedroom apartment. I was working, she was still in school, and I had just a little card table that I set up my computer at and did work from. And meanwhile, she took over the whole couch, and the Labradors running back and forth between both of us. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah, it was
it
just a crazy, crazy time.
sucked at the time, but like you said, it's something you can laugh about now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Well, Doug, kind of going back to a little bit more of your personal background, what got you into editing, publishing, and writing?
Gosh, that's a long story, and I'm going to try to keep it short. But the real long story short version is when I was about 13, I purchased the novel Stephen King's It from a garage sale, and I read it over a single summer. I'm one of probably millions of people who read a Stephen King book when they were probably a little bit not ready for it. But really, that was a turning point for me because it's all I really wanted to do after that. And so I tried for, I don't know why, but I tried for a few years when I was around college age not to do that, to do something more
You thought it
respectable.
was,
So
yeah, yeah.
I was like 9 days out of going into law school, signed up for all of it, took the LSAT, you know, all of it, signed up for classes. And then I just kind of hit the brakes and I realized this is not what I want to do. And then changed course and instead went to get my master's degree in English and creative writing. And so that's really the time that I felt like things really first started to line up for me. Like I could actually accept this is what I want to do and I want to get serious about it. Because up until that point, it was just kind of something that was fun and felt rebellious. And but yeah, after that, I got a gig in communications, corporate communications, and on the side though, I was still interested in writing and editing, and I for a few years I really made a go of it to try to be a short story writer, and actually made some sales, and started to rack up kind of a little bit of a bibliography, but then kind of out of the blue, just another author in on the scene, kind of his name's D. Alexander Ward. He had seen some of my stories, he liked my stuff, and he said, "You want to edit an anthology?" And for those of you who aren't in the business, which is the vast majority, I would assume, is an anthology is a book that's full of different short stories from different authors. And so the process of that is to collect them all kind of usually under a theme and then publish them under that theme. And for whatever reason, I originally said no, and my wife kind of talked me into it. She said, "This sounds like fun. This is something that I think you would be really good at." And to her credit, I mean, she changed my life that day. And
So it was
from there,
never on your like your mindset wasn't even remotely thinking about that then.
well, it's always an option to be involved. Like whenever you're in a business or an industry of any kind, there are different facets of that. So like if you're a baseball player, you could be a coach, or you could be you can maintain fields or be an announcer. So you're kind of aware of all of those things, but my heart was really after that dream of becoming the writer. Um and what's interesting about this course is there's there's just a flood of people who want to be the next Stephen King. There's not a ton of people who want to do a really great job at independent publishing. And the more I got into it, the more I realized this is something that my friends and colleagues and people like me need somebody to step in and professionalize and do a good job of it, because there are horror stories, and I don't mean to get punny about it, but there are horror stories about you know, publishers popping up and then they collapse and then nobody gets paid.
Yep.
It's just the field is littered with the bodies of cautionary tales. And so I got a couple of these anthologies under my belt and kind of learned what um, I liked and what I didn't like about the process. Had an opportunity to work with a number of the authors that I grew up reading, like Clive Barker, who's a prolific novelist, but also wrote and directed the movie Hellraiser. And
Okay, yeah.
yeah, I mean, just some really formative people, and I realized that I loved it, and so it was kind of a happy accident that I got into this particular part of it, and sooner or later, and I can't remember exactly when, but I just decided this is the part that I wanted to do. And then, you know, 10 years into it, I kind of got tired of working for other people. So that's where Bad Hand Books came from.
So at that kind of time you were still doing the communications job, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I worked in higher education and healthcare and energy during that time as kind of a
Okay.
corporate comms guy. And that was another facet of it. Like I was learning marketing at the same time that I was kind of unbeknownst to me formulating this idea that would ultimately take a lot of those marketing skills.
Very cool. So what was the official day then that Bad Hand became a publishing company?
It would have been January 2022. And then
Okay.
it was a while before we published our first book. But if I can back up and give you something a little more interesting, I think, than the actual LLC, is so this is part of the reason why we were talking earlier that I moved from Rapid City to Brookings with my family. At the time, I was working for an energy company out in Rapid City, and there was a huge wave of layoffs. Okay, and at that time, I was the sole breadwinner of our family. So we had four kids under 6 years old. My wife at the time was a stay-at-home mom, and I was freaking out about trying to figure out what in the world are we going to do. Um, and so I started taking on freelance editing work and some things here and there, but nothing that really felt sustainable. And I don't know why. Again, this is one of those times when I think you go a little bit nutty. Is um, I started telling myself, you can do a lot with a bad hand. And I was sort of taunting myself with it because there was really nothing for me left out there. And I could see my bank account going down. And that was actually the same year that I won the Bram Stoker Award, which is sort of like the horror Oscar award. So
Uh-huh.
it was like, it was this weird perspective where I had the one of the things that I'd always wanted to achieve, but like I couldn't see how I was going to feed my kids in the next 6 months. And so it became sort of this mantra that I would tell myself almost to poke fun at myself. But then there was a time, when the branding and marketing guy, that lives in my head came out and he was like, well,
Hmm.
there's actually quite a few bad hands in horror, like Hellboy's Right Hand of Doom. You've got the Monkey's Paw. If you're an Evil Dead fan, there's Ash Williams's hand that
Yeah,
he later replaces
absolutely.
with the chainsaw. And I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. And so what started out as kind of a joke at my expense became this idea this promise that I made to myself where it was if I ever got back on my feet, I would name my company Bad Hand Books because I wanted to kind of turn my bad hand into a bit of a middle finger and then, use that as sort of like, all right, life's going to throw this stuff at me. Well, I'm going to ride out under this banner and see what we can do.
That's that is a very interesting and cool story. I
Thank you.
was thinking of it in terms of, bad hand, like the cards you're being dealt, but from your everything you're saying, it makes perfect sense in the horror genre and everything. That is really cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
And I think you're doing, I am far from a creative person myself, but I think, the cliche you hear and everything is creative people, they struggle with finding the way to make a living off of it. And so I think that is a very inspiring journey that you've literally lived it through and you're doing it now.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had a lot of help from really good people in the business, and I've been extremely fortunate. A lot of those contacts that I made during the formative 10 years, where I was working for other small publishers, really came in handy when it came time for me to start calling in, folks that maybe wanted to publish it with Bad Hand because I had built up a reputation of being professional and fair and paying well and all the stuff that you want, and I was able to kind of take that and apply it to Bad Hand Books.
Very cool. I gotta ask, what drew you you said was Stephen King what made you choose the horror genre, or was there any other thoughts besides that before going in a different direction?
You know, I would have to give Stephen King all the credit for starting me down that path. And then, I branched out and I started to read Poe and Lovecraft and Started to really get into horror movies at the same time. I watched a lot of um, Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs back in the 90s,
Okay,
the
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like drive-in stuff. Um, and so listened to a lot of horror adjacent rock music, and it just sort of became that thing that I felt most myself when I was experiencing or participating in. And so ultimately, I don't want to get too mystical about it, but it doesn't even really feel like a choice. It feels just like this is me being me, and
Hmm.
the thing that I care most about aside from my family, of course.
You kind of hit on your connections and everything helped you make that transition from just being a creative to making a living and career out of it. If you're talking to someone kind of, or maybe yourself in the younger years, what are some pieces of advice that would help others in that journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, it was one of those things that kind of felt like it happened by accident because it was around the time that I signed on for that first anthology. And the Writers Association, which is the professional association of writers of horror fiction, has been around since the 1990s, and they're the ones who actually give out the Bram Stoker Award. They were calling for volunteers at the time. And I thought, well, I was in my uh, 20s at the time and kind of felt like a little bit adrift at that time, not really sure how to get into the business. And so I applied for, there were two jobs. There was the a membership coordinator position, which basically just checked on people's credentials to see if they'd made the right amount of sales to be a member. And then um, there was a communications coordinator that they needed. And so I applied because at that time, I don't know, I was still kind of uh, scared to really jump in. I applied for the membership coordinator position. And the president of the Horror Writers Association, his name was Rocky Wood, emailed me back, and he said, "Well, I've seen your resume. Why did you not apply for the communications coordinator position?" And I didn't have a good answer. And I thought, well, if the president of the association wants me to do this, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. Um, and that was another sort of life-changing thing where somebody was there to see something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself, or didn't want to. I didn't have the conviction to push forward on it at the time. I needed a
Hmm.
nudge. But that, he was great about it. He let me do kind of basically anything I wanted to do with the role. And I came up with this interview series called Noah Nominee. And it was, I wanted to interview all the Stoker Award nominees to see kind of like do their 5 questions and promote the awards in that way. Um,
Yeah.
but again, what I didn't realize I was doing was I was building up a Rolodex of award winning and award nominated authors that knew who I was, had some credibility with the organization. I know this is a really long answer, but I will get around to a point, I promise.
It's perfect.
So,
No
so when it
worries.
came time to put together that table of contents for the anthology, I had a bunch of great authors that I didn't have to cold call. They knew who I was. So when I was, even though it was my first anthology, it wasn't really my first rodeo with these folks. And
Hmm.
so I would say if you're looking for a way to break in, um, put yourself into relationships with people who know more than you. You don't know where that is going to lead, and that's kind of part of the fun. They might see something in you that puts you on a trajectory that you could not have imagined, but is wonderful. Um, and it's not always about who you know because you have to follow through and actually do a good job.
Yeah.
But just even if it's an informal relationship, it doesn't have to be a professional organization. Make sure that you kind of have a mentor who can help to shape your journey. And there are a lot of ways to do that, especially in the age of social media. But writing itself is a lonely endeavor, but being a writer doesn't have to be.
That's that is great right there. I think that's what everyone should take out of there is what you said.
Thank you.
Doug, what's kind of on the any exciting news you could share on the horizon, either personally or with Bad Hand Books?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a great time to be at Bad Hand right now. We recently announced, and we actually published the first issue of a novel called The End Times, which is by Benjamin Percy, and a lesser known author named Stephen King. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
who's that?
And so what we're doing there is it's a novel length work, but we are publishing it over 12 newspaper issues. And so it will be delivered in print format or in digital format, whichever you sign up for. But it's the story of a society rebuilding itself after the apocalypse, and asks questions about the role of media and newspapers and community building, the role of misinformation. There's plot twists and turns, and of course, having Stephen King involved is absolutely a dream come true. Considering he's the one that is responsible for kicking all this off for me.
Kind of hero to peer moment. So have you got to personally talk with him then?
So it's an interesting kind of a dynamic because Ben Percy has the main point of contact with Stephen
Yep.
King, and it has all moved really fast. And so the long story short is not yet, but I think as
It,
the publisher of this project, as it evolves, we will probably be in touch. But
that's amazing.
yeah, it when I say it moved fast, let me give you some context for that, because we I brought Ben Percy on, who's a prolific novelist and the current writer of Wolverine for Marvel right now. Um, he emailed me at the beginning of this year, and he basically said, "You want to take a big swing together?" And he laid out the vision for the End Times, which was the series of newspapers. He kind of had a document that went over the story arc. And one of the things I like to do at Bad Hand is take those big swings. And so this is perfect. But at that point, it was a solo Ben Percy project. Um,
Hmm.
a few months into it, he emails me and he goes, "I don't want you to get too excited, but I emailed Stephen King to see if maybe he would want to contribute in some way."
I bet
I'd
you
say that
jumped
was a
right out of your chair.
well, yes and no, because it's like dropping a penny in a well.
Yeah, very true.
It's like it might be better, I told myself, to just forget that I ever saw this,
Hmm.
because I wanted to make sure to stay focused. And but I didn't have much time to think about it, because let's say that was a Monday. On Wednesday, Ben emailed me back and he said, "Okay, Steve's in. By the way, here's his first article. And then, by the way, Fangoria, which is one of the biggest publications in horror, is going to break the story tomorrow." And so it was wonderful. Like I just kind of had to sit back and let it happen. And then, of course, being a PR guy, I immediately hired a public relations person for Bad Hand Books to kind of get control of the story after that. But those two have been working together, and it's been fun to see. Um, some of the earlier issues have been rewritten based on what Stephen King has added later, and they have sort of collaborated in quasi real time over email, just like cha- uh, trading ideas, and then Ben will live text me what's going on. And so it's
Yeah.
been fun to watch that grow and develop. And as a publisher, again, dream come true.
Oh, there's the pinnacle right there. Well, Doug, congratulations on all of that. I want you to do a little bit of plugging here. If people want to know more about you or find the stories that you're publishing and the work in your own personal works, where would you send them to?
So go to badhandbooks.com, and that's our website. Bad Hand Books is on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. We're technically on Twitter, but we're not very active there. And we technically have a TikTok account, but I'm in my mid 40s, and I
And
just
maybe you could start getting some dances.
yeah, I mean, we'll figure something out there. But we're really more active on Blue Sky and Instagram. We do have a newsletter you can sign up for called the Bad Handout. It's a weekly e-newsletter, and then we've got a podcast that happens bi-weekly called The Bad Signal. So you can get that on Apple or Spotify as well.
Awesome. Well, Doug, I appreciate all your insights, and I think it's very inspiring for other creatives to hear that you can keep going, even if it's not the original vision, you can still work in something you're very passionate about. So I appreciate you sharing all that with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I think it's important that it's happening here, right? It's behind me. You can see there's a lemon tree, and that's kind of what I'll leave you with is I really enjoy the absurd. I like the idea of growing lemons in South Dakota in the winter, and I love the idea of publishing horror books and Stephen King from the middle of the Midwest. We're mostly known for, corn, cows, and conservatives, and those are all fine, but there's other stuff happening in South Dakota as well.
Yeah, that's an important message, and you're part of spreading that. So thank you again, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.